The A Show.
Where smart is the new sexy.
And now, April Hunter.
Hello, all you beautiful, smart, and sexy people. How are you doing tonight? I am seeing you fill up our wonderful comment section, so it's nice to see so many of you live. Hi, Michael, Ricardo, Gerald. I'm going to say that wrong. Gerald. I'm going to say that wrong. Hi to you, Patricio. Yes, that. Lon. Hi to everybody coming in here. I see Big Wig. All of you awesome people, thank you for coming in tonight and keeping us company. And to everybody who will, be watching us and watching our replay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Eva and I have a fun show for you tonight, and an informative one. We're expecting Ty Whitman to join us. He's a water expert. He worked I'll let him fill you in, but he worked in the state of California on all the water systems in Northern California. And who better than Ty to fill us in on what's going on with defluoridation of the tap water? So as we saw last week, a lot of people basically losing their minds when the state of Florida, after the state of Utah did this first, state of Florida decided to defluoridate the tap water. And the comments we saw we're very uneducated. Yeah. Like people just like, oh great, everybody's going to be toothless. And I was like, I think people really need to understand what's going on here. So we reached out to Ty and he said he would come on, so he'll be joining us shortly as to what's in our water, how much dental protection we have, and of course, we did reach out to the CDC too. They said they've been saying that there have been dental benefits. So we reached out to them to ask for all their studies and all their control studies, and I'll explain that, and I'll tell you what we have, and to explain the fluoridation process and how that works, and to understand the difference between clean water, processing water, and fluoride, which is different. It's not the same as like chlorine and cleaning it. So we're not sure if a lot of people got that confused or not, but apparently a lot of people don't understand their drinking water. So we're going to make it understandable. We're also in Lake Collecticon this Sunday. So June 1st, up in Leesburg. I'm going to be at Lake Square Mall doing a signing, and I hope to see you. I'll be there from 12 to 5. Ms. Eva will be with me, so please come out and hang out with us. It is a beautiful little town. It is a fun, free event, free parking, free event. Families are welcome. There's a cosplay competition there. It's just an all-around kind of feel-good thing, and this is their good show. So their summer show is always a good show. So come out and see us 12 to 5, Lake Square Mall in Leesburg on Sunday, June 1st. Would love to see you. And we have a surprise second show tomorrow night. You all are invited to. It will replay on Tuesday at our normal time, but Big Ray Hernandez will be joining us. Now, you all know that he has a crazy work schedule. So we're going to tape with him around 11 something tomorrow night, Wednesday night. So it's going to be late, and I know a lot of people can't join us, but he asked if we could just be live anyway. I said, sure, let's make it live. And then we'll pre-tape that and put it up for the following week, because I'll be in traveling the following week. So we're going to do that. So if you can't make it with us Wednesday night, late, that's cool. But if you can, we'd love to have you, because it'll be his first time back since, everything kind of fell apart, and he has an interesting topic that he wants to talk about. So he's not coming back to co-host. He's coming back because he wants to visit. So we're excited to have him come visit.
Absolutely.
So I see more people have joined us. Alex, Allie, Red Sunny, War Demon. Hi. Let's see, who else? Am I missing some? I think I'm missing some, but hey, Chico. See you right back there. Michael says, I remember when I lived in New York, you could drink the tap water, not in Florida. No. Florida has not so good water, although
It depends where.
Yeah, it depends, but by and large, it's not a good quality water. So
Right.
I'm in a little small town between Clearwater and Tampa where we have our own water supply, and it's reverse osmosis. So our water is actually pretty quality, but we are not typical. That is not typical at all. So we're very fortunate, and we pay for it. We pay for it.
Yeah, I pay for an RO system, so I don't have to worry about it.
Everybody has to destroy your faucets and everything else. Michael says water in Florida is different. Tap water here makes your stomach sick. Got to drink bottled water. Yep. So pretty much that's. I remember when I moved into a little town called Safety Harbor. It was a division of Clearwater. All my faucet and my dishwasher and all those things started to, I guess, corrode and fall apart. And someone told me, yeah, it's the water here. It's just so bad that it just destroys everything. And they said it destroys the pet's teeth. I was going to the early on, I was taking the dogs over to the dog park, and several of the owners are like, "Don't let the dogs drink the tap water here; it destroys their teeth." Because there's a lot of older dogs that had no teeth at all, and I was like, "Okay."
It so depends on where you are. It really does. One part of my town is fine, one part's not. Two different water companies. One buys from the other, one has bad pipes.
Yeah.
So they all have the same additives. It's just whether or not their pipes and what they do with it.
Yeah.
Allison's right, of course. Her father invented the RO system, by the way.
Oh, really? Thank you.
Yes.
We love it. See, I drink well water up in North Carolina. It's mountain water. So I don't think that's treated water, but maybe in its own way it is.
No.
It's not treated, right?
No, well, it's going to have some chlorine. It has to, by law. But outside of that, who knows?
How by law when it's a well?
Oh, I'm sorry. You said spring water, so I wasn't thinking.
Oh no, water.
Well is not treated. It's whatever your well has in it. So you might be drinking good stuff. You may.
Yeah, I drink untreated water all the time, and to me, everything. The water tastes amazing, and the coffee tastes amazing. It's just, I get up there the first day I have coffee after leaving Florida, and I'm just like, "What's with the mountain water up here? It's so good." Like it's.
Hey, you know what else makes good coffee? Shitty water. Awful city, Philadelphia crap water.
No, Philadelphia shit water makes good bread.
Well, it does that too.
It makes good bread. It makes good baked goods. It does not make good coffee. I'm gonna dispute that one. But if you say
okay.
Bigwig says, who else grew up drinking out of the hose outside?
I did.
It was so hot. It was so hot. You had to let it run. Like the first person who got to the hose was like punished.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Wait, says God water. Yes, definitely.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we do have both. We have blue shirts on. Let's see what Ty ends up wearing.
I didn't expect that. Sorry,
I didn't either. I just felt blue.
That's exactly what I grabbed.
It's a throat chakra day.
There you go. Oh, you got some biddies already.
We do. Cool. Awesome, dude. Thank you. So before Ty joins us, we're going to take advantage of, let's see, we got a little bit of stuff to talk about with you guys. So of course, like I covered, in case you weren't here earlier, got Lake Collecticon, Lake Square Mall, Leesburg on Sunday, June 1st, amazing Comic-Con, all free. And we also have Big Ray Hernandez for a special podcast tomorrow night around 11-ish. Give or take. We're gonna do that live, so you're welcome to join us. We'll pre-tape it and put it on next week's show. So if you're up, if you're a night person, if you're just curious and you want to join us, around same thing. We're gonna still be on Twitch and YouTube. You have all the information. Feel free to join us if you're hanging out and you don't have anything better to do. So
that's an interesting comment. You should.
What? April doesn't flex her tatas in front of guests unless they're busty females. Not always. I didn't do it in front of Laurie.
That's not true.
Yeah. Not always. What I try to do is not flex my tatas in front of people when they're talking about serious subjects. So I try and wait.
Yeah.
So, Alex says back-to-back A shows this week. Yeah, kind of. We're doing it because I'm traveling next week, so it's easier for us to do that. And also, Eva works like 10-hour days. She's got a crazy work schedule, so every so often, if we pre-tape, it actually gives her a little bit of time off.
It does.
No, she doesn't get any time off hardly.
No,
so
especially not this week.
The fact that she gives us her time, I'm grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I enjoy this.
Well, we're happy to have
thank
you. Kenny, what's up? Thank you for joining us. Yes. I think we're gonna have a good show with Ray. It'll be fun.
Yeah,
We're very, very excited to have him back on. So
thanks, Michael, too, by the way.
And Lon says, I've been drinking more spring water since my heart attack last November. Well, I'm glad you're doing better. First off, I know you've been keeping me informed on all that. And spring water is allegedly better than the purified water. So I just say allegedly to everything these days because I don't even know what's real anymore. Do you guys feel like?
We'll leave that for Ty.
Yeah, do you guys feel like you just like everything? You're like, I don't know what the fuck is real anymore. Like
everything's fucking bad for you.
Like everything is bad for you. Everything is like all of history was just. That's like nothing's real. Like, do you feel like you're just sitting there and you're like, here's what I know is real. Okay, I know the fallout from history is real. You know, like what people personally suffered, and I know my dogs are real. I know my cat is real. I know my food tastes good. I know my friends and my family are right there. That's what I know. That's about all I know. The more I learn, the less I know.
Well, hey, before we get rolling anymore, if anybody's lurking, please sign in and say hi.
Yes.
We would appreciate knowing you're here. You don't have to talk, but just sign in.
Lisa, thanks for joining us. So yeah, please share the show. Okay, so I'll fill you in on what happened last week. Instagram did not delete my account. They saw a wrestling picture in the ring. I'm a wrestler.
Was it 2018?
From 5 years ago. It was me and Sahara Huxley in the ring. They called it wait for it, human exploitation. So they got rid of the picture and put me under review for human exploitation for a pro wrestling picture. And then, this is the best part, they made a mistake. Their AI policing made a mistake, and then they restored my account with restrictions. So
wow, that's fantastic.
Pro wrestling picture, labeled it human exploitation, and then restricted my account because they screwed up. And Piers, what's up? Welcome.
I know,
welcome.
right? I just saw it pop in, eh?
Yeah. And then I got another one after I disputed that on Facebook. I got another one right after that. So,
and what was that one?
That was when I said, and I'm in a family with the family of autism. I said, if you're pushing back against more research into autism simply because the person who suggested it is somebody that you don't like, you are a fucking cunt. But I actually, I didn't say it that harsh. I just said you might be an asshole if you're pushing back against more research because the person you don't like suggested it. And they said that was, what was that? Hang on a second. They said I was bullying a group of disabled people. Hate speech towards people with a disability.
Well, in that case, you know what? Never mind. I'm not even going to say it. What else? Well, you got that back, right? You're back online. So I stand by both of those things. I stand by my wrestling picture, and I stand by the fact that if people are pushing back against more research into autism strictly because they don't like the person who suggested it, you are an asshole. And if you can't find her on them and they restrict her shit, go find her on X. Bullshit.
So Meta, suck it, okay? There you go. I'm standing by it and I'm doubling down on it. All right. So
hey, don't forget, she's got a website. You can go to her website.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Patreon.com, April Hunter. All right. So more stuff going on. Energy drinks. Do not drink these. They are bad. Okay.
And how bad?
They're pretty bad. So the more we're finding out about energy drinks, the more we're realizing how bad they are for us. So a lot of the taurine, a lot of the things that are in the energy drinks are really not good for us. So stick to plain old coffee. Caffeine is long-term tested. Been around for
and if you need a boost,
huh?
there's the caffeine pills too. All natural caffeine pills you can get, things like that if you really need a boost.
Avoid the energy drinks. They're coming out. They're not. It's not good. Please know that what's going on in the news is completely inspired by the BRICS money. You know, we've been talking about BRICS on and off for years now. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So if you see a pattern here with the things in the news versus us, there's a reason for it. So we've warned you about BRICS for ages now. Please understand that when you see things going on, there is a bigger picture and a more of an interest. So when you see things going on with India, we have a vested interest in destabilizing India. We have a vested interest in destabilizing South Africa. We can't destabilize China or Russia, really, because they've teamed up. But BRICS is a currency that will cause problems for us, big ones. It's basically declaring war without a war. So please understand, it's too much to go into right now because we're going to have Ty come on. But I would like for you, if you want to know what's going on and what's behind a lot of the moves being made on the chessboard, look up BRICS and see all the nations who have joined in. It's not just those 5 nations. See all the nations who have signed up for this financial system that is not the dollar. So like we said, the dollar used to be backed by gold, and then it was backed by petrol. And then as of about a year and a half ago, it's not backed by anything at all, nothing. So incidentally, we are sponsored by a gold company, Wise Wolf, Wise Wolf. And you can go to, it's a gold and silver exchange, and you can secure your financial future for you and yours. Go to aprilhunter.gold and you can purchase some, precious metals to make sure that your money is not going to die. So
and use cash anytime you can. Use cash. Screw them. So
highly suggest you pay attention to what's going on, because that's the motivator for a lot of things going on right now. We found out through science that gas and oil ended up being renewable resources. That just came out. So new science is declaring gas and oil renewable. It's so weird that you heard that on this podcast beforehand when we had Professor Greeny on. But it is called, it's hydrothermal liquefaction. So they're using something called hydrothermal liquefaction, and we are able to make gas and oil renewable energy now. So that's kind of cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I was curious because I was looking that up, like how long does it take for the ground to naturally produce oil? So could we run out of oil, all that stuff? And if they can figure out how to speed this process up, I think it was they say 1 day they could make so much oil.
Yeah, they've managed to speed it up quite a bit, and they're using algae.
Yeah,
algae, water, shale. Yeah. So, what else is going on?
I had a couple things too. Whenever you're.
Yeah. Okay. Please be aware. It's summertime. Please be aware of chemical versus mineral sunscreens. Mineral works wonderfully. Chemical is actually really not only bad for you, but it's bad for the marine system. So a lot of places now are actually starting to not let tourists in the water. So because they're trying to protect their ecosystem. And
understandable.
Florida's got actually a lot of issues now because of all the chemical sunscreens. So if we switch to like a zinc-based sunscreen, we can protect our marine life a lot better. So more people who know about mineral versus chemical, so might want to spread that along. That helps. We are finding out that spraying your lawn, all the chemicals in the lawn, is actually linked directly to cancer in dogs. So another reason you can save some money and not spray your lawn. So
yes,
keep the
there's
pets
plenty
healthy.
of natural things you can do. And oh my God, you can pull weeds. There's a novelty.
Some of those weeds are actually very medicinal. You'll have an apothecary out there with dandelions and milk thistle and stinging nettle. So
yes.
Yep. Let's see. Oh, Kenny, we decided to dress for you.
Yes.
Oh,
that's
what
funny.
else? And then we also the COVID findings that happened this past week. Let me just read you the article. So I watched.
Yes.
This was a big one, you guys. You know that this is why we started the podcast, because of the censorship. And I'm going to try and squish this in before Ty joins us. Because of everything that happened and not being able to get anything out there. This was why. This is why this podcast was originally started, is to warn people. We felt that they weren't being fully informed with everything out there. We felt that there was a lot of deception, a lot of lies. And turns out we weren't wrong on any of it. So for those of you who actually had faith in us and listened, thank you. We appreciate you. And hopefully we helped you. I watched the entire court. I watched all of it. From start.
What are you talking about? You talking about the
there was a court
Senate hearing?
Yeah, there was a Senate hearing last week that was covered by nobody. Okay, so nobody was there.
Right?
Not even the Onion reported on this. Okay, so Fox News, there was no NBC, the MSNBC, CNN, like New York Post, New York Times, Washington. None of it was reported. Hours long committee about COVID vaccine risks being hidden. They knew, and not a single outlet reported on this. This is crazy. So I'm going to read the summation as a short summation to you. A new government report by Senator Ron Johnson's investigative subcommittee alleges that the CDC, FDA, and HHS deliberately downplayed myocarditis and other serious adverse events linked to mRNA COVID vaccines, especially in young people. Now, if you recall, we told you guys repeatedly, if you have had an mRNA vaccine, you must switch to low impact exercise. This is vital. Don't do no more running, switch to yoga, switch to walking. Everything has to be low impact, especially if you're younger. You know, you can go back through all those podcasts and see that we're constantly warning about this. Well, it turns out that was valid. Internal emails reveal that health authorities discussed issuing public alerts about these risks as early as May 2021, but opted instead for vague clinical considerations. The agencies reportedly withheld critical safety data from healthcare providers and the public while privately informing vaccine manufacturers. The report raises alarms concerning transparency, medical ethics, and informed consent, highlighting systemic failures that may have compromised public trust in vaccine guidance. So basically that means they fucked everybody and lied.
Yep.
And while they reported to the manufacturers, they kept everything from the public. Additionally, there were a lot of private Facebook groups because people were having these things happen to each other. They were dealing with GBS and a family member that had a sudden heart attack after being jabbed. And
GBS is what?
I always pronounce it wrong. I'm gonna say
Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Syndrome. Yeah. They were dealing with neurological side effects. They were dealing with myocarditis, pericarditis, all that. So they could not get any real information. They could not, no doctors would help them. They were being sent home and told that they were just dealing with anxiety. So they started private Facebook groups so they could reach out to each other and talk to each other. And they were being, those Facebook groups, once people found out that they were there, they were being censored, they were being shut down, they were being gaslit, they were being told it was all in their head. And the rate of suicides after the adverse effects and the deleted, and after bullying these people and telling them that they didn't matter, these things that happened to them that they did in good faith because they were told to do this for the greater good of humanity. And then once something happened, there was zero accountability, zero motherfucking accountability to the vaccine companies. And then they got bullied and beat up by the public and the medical community. It was telling them it was all in their head and it didn't exist. So the rate of suicides went through the roof. And a lot of people in this court that happened, that Senate hearing, were the ones to get that last letter. So this stuff happened. And to pretend that it didn't and to move on, to just move on, we can't just move on.
No, there's too many things.
No, the reason we can't move on is because they will do this again. They will do this again. If we let them, we keep letting people do these things and there's no accountability. Nobody is being strung up publicly. Nobody's being held accountable for anything. They're just getting away with it. They're just all getting away with it. It's up to us to make sure they're held accountable. We have to push back. So something has to be done. And I think it's going to be up to us because if we wait for governments who are sponsored by Pfizer, who have contracts with Moderna, if we wait for that to happen, we're going to be 92 years old and too tired and old to do anything. So we're going to have to make this happen.
Don't forget they're coming out with those new variants and shots and stuff. So watch out for all those things. Don't fall for that.
Yeah, now we got Aerovax being tested and sa-mRNA. And sa-mRNA is spread through the air, as is Aerovax. So
stay informed, more to come.
Yeah, that's in the second trial phase now. So like, when do they stop? When do they stop? It's now come out that more people have been injured, hurt, or even killed by the COVID vaccine than by COVID. And it also came out that half of the proposed COVID deaths were not COVID deaths.
Right. So, I'm glad it's finally coming out. We all knew it.
Yeah.
You told it. And I'm just glad to hear it's coming out. We won't ever hear the full scope of any of it. So.
No. No, we won't. And quite honestly, I would reckon that the overwhelming majority of COVID deaths were not COVID deaths.
Right.
There's a reason that people only died in hospitals. There's no other disease in history where people only died in hospitals after being treated. Every other disease in history, from cancer to leprosy to polio to Black Plague, people died in various places other than under medical care. But this disease, 99% of people who died or more, probably closer to 100%, only died in hospitals. And oddly enough, it was financially incentivized by the CARES Act, where hospitals were awarded over $30,000 per death.
And I don't understand how they can call it a disease, honestly. It's
a bioweapon. They unleashed it upon us, and we know that now too.
Yeah, we do. So
everything we've been saying, that's so if you're not angry about this, if you're not angry about this, you might want to re-examine. There's no way to move on when things haven't been taken care of or settled. So, that's something we all have to deal with, and we have to push back against it and not let them get away with it. So that's it. Yeah,
well, we'll keep you informed on that. We'll look into all that, and we'll talk more about the other vaccines that they're trying to do and keep you up to date.
Yeah. So, and thanks for all the comments in the thing. Well, meanwhile, we've got Ty with us. So why don't we welcome him on? So, woo!
Hey,
Ty Whitman coming back to join us. How are you?
Hey, I know you can hear me fine. Everything's good, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And you're
I
nice
know
and
you
bright.
wanted me to come on to talk about fluoride, but as I'm sitting there listening, I told you the story about my car crash and going to the hospital with COVID, right?
Tell us here.
Yeah, go ahead. We know the chair.
I was in a very serious car crash 5 years ago. I still have no memory of the car crash. It was at the very beginning of all the COVID stuff around here. I think we just started having lockdowns and stuff. And I was cut out of this vehicle, brought to the hospital. I wake up like 5 hours later. I don't know what's going on. I'm just in this room. I don't know where I'm at. I'm in a fog. I had a bad concussion. And a guy came in and I said, what happened? He says, you were in a very bad car crash. You were brought to the hospital by ambulance and you have coronavirus. That was the first sentence out of his mouth. And I said, I don't have coronavirus. I go, I ride my bike like 10 miles a day, like 4 times a week. I'd know if I have coronavirus. I was totally fine. I go, where did you get that from? He goes, well, we did some x-rays when you came in. This is before they had testing, right? He goes, we did some x-rays before you came in and your lungs kind of look like COVID. And so we're treating you as a COVID patient. And for the whole week that I was in the hospital, they were treating me as if I had COVID. And then the day they tell me they're going to release me, they said, well, your sister's going to come pick you up. I said, how can you just release me to my sister's house if I have coronavirus? And an hour and a half later, magically, they got these test results back that said negative. But I guarantee you, if I'd have died from that car crash, I'd have been a COVID death.
You died from COVID.
Yep. I guarantee you I'd have been a COVID death.
Yeah, I know people who are still trying to get that off their loved one's death certificate because like their loved one died from a car accident or cancer and it says COVID on the death certificate. And they're like, fuck you, take that off and refund the money.
I'm not trying to laugh at that. I'm just saying.
I know. It's so crooked. I can't even gonna tell. Oh my God.
So wait, before we move on, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna tell us who you are and why you're an expert in water. But come on, Eva, are you closing this particular comment out?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
That's what I was gonna do. And watch out for the fact that there's a not old but coming back being forced upon. If you haven't had your vaccines, let's say for not necessarily COVID but flu vaccine, and you go into the hospital. If you're out of it, they're just going to give it to you, by the way, when you're under.
Oh, yeah.
And if you may be signing for it and not even know it because you're in an emergency room, read the writing, making sure that.
They have us now every year. They have us sign a form. And I actually make sure on the form that they have me sign, I write no COVID shots without my attention. And
flu and the rest of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tian Kupiner says, my best friend's aunt died from cancer 10 minutes after the nurse asked if they could use COVID as the reason of death. Wow. So yeah, you guys, you should know about that. There's as of recently, and I mean really recently, there's new language in the hospitals, and it's called biogenetics. So if you sign a consent form in the hospital and it includes biogenetics, that is agreeing to vaccinations of any kind, even if you are under anesthesia. So if you have not had your vaccinations and you do not want them, if you sign the consent form and you agree to biogenetics, they will give you all those vaccinations. So please be aware of that. And if you come in unconscious, be aware of whoever is next in line to sign for you to make sure they're aware of this too, what your wishes are. If you want them, great. If you don't want them, make sure you and they and everybody are aware of that.
Right on. Sorry, that's what I was going to finish with right there.
So our thing is fully informed consent. So my issue is a lot of people do not have fully informed consent. Whatever you want, that's great. You pick that, that's great. But you should know what you're choosing. You should know everything about it. You should know what you're getting into. So, and you should be able to see all the trials, all the tests, all the control group, all the whole thing. You should know the ingredients. You should know everything before you make a decision. So, yeah.
Agree. So Ty, sorry.
Yeah, I saw.
Hi. Y'all brought me on to talk about fluoride today. And we've been good friends for what? I'd say we were talking about this the other day, April. Has it been like 3.5 years already, maybe?
Yes.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
it's been a while. And you know, because of our conversations we've had, that I'm passionate about being anti-fluoride.
Yeah.
You haven't known me for my water career side of my life, but I actually spent a little over 17, I'd call it 17 and a half years working in public water systems. I started doing maintenance of the system. I went from there into the service. So when emergencies happened, I was the first one on call, or I'd be sent out to people with bills complaints. And then from there, I went into running distribution systems. I worked for San Jose Water out in California, one of the largest private companies in the United States. And they did a large portion of the Bay Area out there in California. And then from there, I learned how to run the treatment plant out there. And I left there and I went to another water company where I ran another treatment plant there for a while. And then I retired about 10 years ago. While I was at San Jose Water Company, I started going through certification ranks. The state requires you to be certified to run treatment plants, to work in distribution systems now at certain levels. And they ask you to be required, they call it a D certification, a distribution certification, and a treatment certification. And I started going through both the ranks of those. When I was at San Jose Water, I got to my distribution 5, which is the highest they have in California. At the time, pretty much only managers of the largest water companies would have a D5. At San Jose Water, which was a huge company, there was only one management level person that had a D5. And I was the first employee in the 100-year history of the company to pass the test for a D5. So word kind of got around the company. I also was, in addition to that, testing for the treatment side of things. And right now, I would say I'm one of the higher certified water employees in the state of California. I got my T4 and retired before I could get the 5 because you need time in, and I had my distribution 5. So I have a treatment 4, distribution 5 level certification.
And you teach classes too, right?
When I was at San Jose Water, specifically when I passed my D5 exam, people started coming to me to ask me for questions and help. And so I started helping people with math. And thank you. Appreciate that, my friend. So I started helping people with math, and it got to the point where I'm like, I'm sick of sitting down and going over math problems with everybody. So I put a math course together. My math, I did good in school, but math was always my worst subject. Mm-hmm. But what I am very good at is analyzing things, figuring them out in easy sense, and I'm good at teaching. So in order to pass the math required for those level of certifications, I had to learn some very advanced math, and I had to learn how to do it in a very easy format. So I started originally teaching classes of math to people at San Jose Water, and God bless them. It was amazing. When you start teaching, you figure all your peers are going to show up and talk trash, but everybody showed up to that first class and they left, and all everybody did was say, oh my God, Ty taught this class. It was fantastic. They asked me to come back and teach again. Next time I taught a class, I probably had 50 people in it. And this is after hours, wasn't charging anything for it, but people had to come in after work. They'd work all day, then come to my math class at night. One of my friends, Nanine, told me she'd failed her exam 5 times, took my math class, passed her exam the next time. And then I started teaching continuing education classes as well. Mm-hmm. And while I was doing all this, I wanted to learn how to podcast. I wanted to learn how to set up a website. So I figured, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm going to do a website around water stuff, water exam training. I'm going to do a podcast around water exam training. Nobody's going to care. So I can do say whatever I want to say. Who cares if I screw up? It doesn't matter. And then when I actually learn how to do this, if I want to set up another site or something down the road, I can do that. So I started that podcast. I started that website, and that stupid little podcast and website has grown to become one of the most popular sources in the entire country for training people for, oh yeah, that's not my thing.
That's his other one though.
Yeah. That stupid little podcast. That was the first one I ever did. If you do Breaking Your Chains, that's what I do now. But this one was called Water Sifu, WATERSIFU. And I didn't know any better because Sifu from martial arts, right, means instructor, teacher, trainer. Nobody knows what a Sifu is. So I'd tell people water Sifu, and I'd see these faces go blank. And then I got to spell it out, water SIFU. And then every time I spell it FFU at the end, it just feels awkward, So I wish in hindsight, I wish I'd have changed it. However, Yeah, when I was doing the water sifu in the very beginning, I put a 4-part series together on water fluoridation. And I will say this, the reason, if you're interested in looking into what we're talking about today in detail, it's a free podcast in any podcast aggregator, water, WATER, sifu, SIFU, and it's episodes 6, 7, 8, 9. So those 4 right there.
I think most people just want to know what's up with the water and like
what got me
defluoridating
it. We did not fluoridate at San Jose water, but what got me into looking into it, SIFU, not CIFU. See, nobody knows what sifu is.
See, you're right. Nobody can do it.
Talking about.
So is that? Wait a minute. Is that the website there.com? I just want to make sure I'm screwing this up.
Yeah.
Because I already did it once. Okay.
No worries. So I will tell you this, April. I don't know if you know this or not. Water fluoridation. Before I decided to look into water fluoridation, and I wanted to look into water fluoridation because it's someone who at the time was in the water industry for about 13 years. I didn't never meet one person involved in the water. Perfect. I never met one person in the water industry in 13 years. And I'm a friendly people. I talked to people. I knew people at the other water companies. I actually represented our water company in training with other water companies as well. Never met one person that wanted to fluoridate the water supply.
Why?
So, for one, as water treatment operators.
San Jose, they've been fluoridating water on and off like since the 60s,
San Jose Water Company did not fluoridate.
Right. So
different parts of the state, they do water. They were really pushing. The fluoridation companies were having a hard time in California. And the exact from their website,
hippy dippy, and they know, right?
What their exact words from the website, if I can remember right, were they were having problems because the state promoted independent thinking or something like that. They thought that was really bad. Yeah, exactly.
So, and wasn't this was federally mandated at some point, right? Under the guise of preventing tooth decay, particularly for children, correct?
It was not federally mandated, but it's interesting. The way it came about is if the water fluoridation could come up with money to fluoridate a water supply, then that company had to do it. They couldn't say no. And I sat here and watched cities fight tooth and nail against the politics of it. Cities would vote it down. They'd come back. They'd put it back on the bill. They'd vote it down again. Somebody would cut them up with money. Then they'd have to fluoridate it. And then they'd implement fluoride. And suddenly I'd see the whole water company's voice change. Fluoridation is one of the greatest things. It was like the Borg in what was that, Star Trek or whatever, you know? They got assimilated. Their whole attitude shifted. But the couple things I'll point out. One, don't blame your water company. Water employees do not want to fluoridate your water supply. Two, one thing we don't like is fluoride is the only chemical added to water, not for the purposes of treating that water. Everything else that's added to water is specifically for the purposes of treating that water. And three, as an operator, fluoride is the most dangerous chemical we work with. It scares the shit out of operators to be around.
Why?
Well, for one thing I'll tell you is the fumes of fluoride don't sink to the ground. So if you've got a leak in a fluoride vat somewhere, if you've got chlorine, the fumes of that they're heavy, they'll settle. Fluoride will just fill the room. But the the fluoride gas is bad. It's also, we can get in this down the road, but it's odorless as well. So if you have a chlorine leak, you're going to smell. You don't want to be in there smelling a bad gas chlorine leak. But it's also extremely corrosive. And so we can get into
why our shit's falling apart around this area.
The one thing I will say about the fluoride camps is, I'll tell you something, Lisa.
Yeah.
I heard that when I started my podcast, that it was injected into the water supply of the concentration camps to keep people, quote, stupid and docile. I never mentioned that in my podcast because I couldn't find proof of that anywhere. However, I will say that what I did find proof of is one guy went over to Germany right after the wars investigating stuff and then came back and suddenly had a big boner for pushing, had
That's okay.
had a passion for pushing fluoride in the United States. But that is something that I've heard several times. Even most of the anti-fluoride camps won't bring that up because we don't want to bring up anything that's not 100% factual because you don't want to ruin your own credibility by bringing up something that cannot be proved. And the anti-fluoride camp, that's all they have to hinge on is calling you nuts. I will say this, fluoride was the first thing I ever looked at in my entire life that people might call a conspiracy theory that made me become a conspiracy theorist. I was a believer that our government's not going to lie to us, that our government's never going to hurt us until I really took the time and dove into fluoride. And after that, I walked away going, wow, our government would really screw us over. Can I say a couple of things real quick?
Yeah, Bigwig says you might die, but you'll have a beautiful smile. And Daryl has a question that we're going to come back to. So hang on, Daryl, because you have a good question.
We can even argue whether you're going to have a beautiful smile. We don't have time to talk about this today, but I've heard you talk about it before. The effectiveness of fluoride, there hasn't really been a study proving it's ever been effective one way or another.
I know.
And if it is effective at all, it's not effective through implementation into the water. And that's another thing that as a water treatment
it's like sunscreen. It's you apply it, you don't drink it.
Yeah, a topical thing. Yeah, as a water operator, the idea of trying to feed a dose through a water system is ridiculous. And the big two things the camps always push, like people now with fluoride being, they're outlawing it in our water. Everybody goes, oh, the dentists are loving it. The dentists are just loving it. First off, just like we had in COVID, doctors repeat things, but doctors aren't the ones doing the studies. You know, I actually did talk to a doctor friend of mine when I was doing my series of fluoride podcast, and I asked him this question. I said, what would you think about a doctor who dosed somebody with a medication? Let's say you got someone into your ER and there's a doctor there and he dosed someone with a medication. He didn't take into account their age. He didn't take into account their weight. He didn't take into account any issues they may have. What do you call that? They always say
pre-existing
allergies or pre-existing conditions, that medication would be harmful to them. And then when they asked you how much of it you should take, that doctor said, just take whatever you feel like. And he said, that'd be absolutely insane. And there's not a doctor, when they say doctors say, there's not one doctor you're ever going to find that's going to argue that that's a ridiculous thing. But that's what happens when we inject water, fluoride into the water supply. And as an operator, I can treat that water, but there's no way I can treat the end consumer. I can even dose that water with a certain amount, but I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if April, you're not going to drink any, and Eva, you're going to drink 2 gallons of water a day. And then on hot days and cold days, people drink more or less water. So even though, like in the plant here in town in Dunedin that I went to, they just have a set dose they run it at. According to all the manuals, when asked, what do you do about hot days and cold days? They tell you, add a little less on hot days, add a little more on cold days. So now what? Water operators are supposed to be weathermen? Weathermen don't even know what the weather's going to be like.
Right. Ironically, the overwhelming majority of crimes happen in the summer because people get agitated in the heat. And the overwhelming majority of Independence Days are also globally in the summer in July and August. So maybe a little fluoride might calm people down. I don't know.
Well, here I have
maybe that was the original train of thought behind it.
That's also about the people who drink tap water. Does not include well water, all those things that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, the bottled water, bottled spring water, things like that, is that treated? Do you know?
319 brands of bottled water do not have any fluoride in them at all.
I want to recommend 2 things.
Okay.
One, this guy, I don't know his name. I'm sorry. He said I drink tap water all day. And I will say one thing. When it comes to not adding fluoride to your water, tap water, I prefer it over bottled water.
Yeah,
Because bottled water goes through a really strict standards of testing by the EPA, by the Department of Health. They're very, very strict. Bottled water is just the FDA, which is not nearly the testing that your tap water gets. So your tap water is actually tested. You may not like the taste if everything's not filtered out, but your tap water actually goes through a lot bit more testing than bottled water. Now, to answer your bottled water question, it depends. You can actually look up a list of bottled waters that have fluoride in them and a list that don't. And I would say it's about 50-50. So you may think you're drinking bottled water just to get around fluoride, but that fluoride might be in your bottled water. Fluoride might be in your Coke too, depending on where they bottle it at. Your Coca-Cola, you know what I mean? Or your sodas or your juices or whatever, depending on where they bottle it at.
Well, Coca-Cola and PepsiCo own a bunch of bottled water plants too.
Nestle does too.
Nestle does too. Yeah.
So if you're trying to drink bottled water without fluoride, you actually have to look up bottled waters, a list of bottled waters, and you can find those online.
Yeah.
Now, isn't it the same as anything else though, that the consistency is going to change depending on how the bottle's shipped, what kind of plastic, or how, all these little.
It depends on the bottled water companies too and how they treat their water. I can't sit there. I can tell you how I treat public water. I can't tell you how the bottled water companies do. I knew of somebody that had a bottled water company when I was in my 20s. All he did was fill it up out of his backyard tap. He made a nice label, filled the bottles up out of his backyard hose, had them in 7-Eleven, selling them all over. So you never know what you're getting with bottled water. One other thing I do want to make sure we get to, though, is when everybody talks about fluoride, they say dentist this, dentist that. And that's not accurate. This is a very good point, Daryl, that I'm going to actually, you're getting right where I'm at right now.
Yeah. For people who are listening and not watching, Daryl's saying, hi, everyone, please explain why fluoride in toothpaste is good, or is it? And fluoride in water is bad, or is it?
Fluoride in toothpaste is bad, Daryl. Fluoride in general, we don't have enough time to get into how non-effective it is. But a lot of the original studies on fluoride, well, the first one is faked. But before I even do that, if we have time to go there, let's do that. Let's talk about what's actually injected into the water. Because anytime you read an article that says fluoride is being removed, and it talks about, fluoride being removed is a terrible thing, dentists are happy fluoride is being removed. Anytime you read an article in the newspaper that just calls it fluoride, they're lying to you, because that's not what's in toothpaste. That's not what's in your water. What's actually injected into your toothpaste is, I have it. Hang on a second here.
Fluorohexa, something or the other, I think, right?
No, it's sodium fluoride.
Okay.
Is what's in your toothpaste. And that's, if you look at your toothpaste label, by the way, there's a poison control message on there that says, if more is swallowed than used for brushing, contact your poison control, whatever, immediately. That's because of the fluoride in the toothpaste. That's
also, toddler training toothpaste doesn't have any fluoride in it at all. People talking about, fluoride is necessary for children, but there's a reason why the toddler training toothpaste doesn't have any in there, because they swallow it.
It's been, and well, not only that, but it's been deemed harmful to younger children.
Yeah,
so
neurologically.
Now the EPA recommends for the past few years. There was actually a case my friend was involved in last September where the EPA was sued and they lost because fluoride was found to be a neurotoxin to the development abilities of children, also increase in ADHD. But so sodium fluoride is what's in the toothpaste. And because of that, there's a poison label on your toothpaste. That's why I get Tom's toothpaste with
me too.
Hello
now,
is available with no fluoride.
The other thing that is sometimes injected into water is sodium silicofluoride, but that's not so much. I'd say about 90 to 95% of what's actually injected into your water isn't fluoride. I'm going to read this quote. I got to read this because fluorideinfo.org. Fluoride is a naturally occurring element. It's found in rocks and soil everywhere, in fresh water and ocean water. In fact, waters in and around the United States have natural fluoride levels, blah, 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 blah. Line of shit, okay? Huge line of shit. That's not what they're putting in your water. What they're putting in your water is hydrofluorosilicic acid. By the way, I went and toured our plant here in Dunedin. There's the vat. It's even labeled hydrofluorosilicic acid. That's what they're putting in your water in 95% of the injections. And people need to know what this is. And I'm going to say something, and it's going to sound absolutely fucking insane to you guys. And then I'm going to back it up with truth, okay? So before fluoride was injected into the water, the hydrofluorosilicic acid was a byproduct of fertilizer manufacturing and aluminum manufacturing. The Alcoa, the aluminum company of America, was being sued all the time because they had to dispose of their hydrofluorosilicic acid. It was a toxic waste. By the way, back at this same time, fluoride was being used in rat poison as well. They don't use it anymore because it's bad PR, but they used to use fluoride in rat poison.
They just put it in our water.
It was a toxic waste. The Alcoa had a ton of lawsuits against them for when their fluoride would go over the land and so forth. They would destroy, it would damage all kinds of the nature. And the Andrew Mellon of the Mellon Institute, the owner of Alcoa, one of the third richest people in the United States at the time, his fingerprints,
Carnegie and Mellon, like Carnegie and Mellon.
His fingerprints, in the interest of time, are all over getting key people, lawyers, and such involved in the EPA and pushing fluoride through. They did a test. They did one test for water fluoridation, and I'll give you the cliff notes on this. It was in 1945, and they had Grand Rapids, Michigan was the city they were going to fluoridate, and the control city was Muskegon, Michigan. It was supposed to be a 10-year study. 5 years into the study, Oscar Ewing, who was a lawyer for Alcoa that was appointed to the EPA, oversaw the DPH, 5 years into the study, instead of the 10 years it was supposed to be, they suddenly declared it a success with no proof. And then what did they immediately do? They started fluoridating the control city. And then I'd say about 13 years later, the whole writing of the study actually came out. Everything was called into question because they immediately fluoridated the control city. So there was never, and then that's what they used to start pushing fluoridation on the whole United States. So there was never any study done that proved it worked when they started. It was the fingerprints of big business in our government pushing it because they had this toxic byproduct of their manufacturing that instead of paying a lot of money to get rid of, they can now inject into our water supply and get paid to do it. So you can say one thing real quick. You can say it was to keep us stupid and docile and dumb us down. There's no proof of that. But we
are losing IQ points with every generation.
And
7 to 11.
And there is proof that it's dumbing down children now that just came out. That was last September. Finally got a case. Can I say what they're actually injecting into the water supply and where it comes
absolutely. From? I've looked up some of the things you were just talking about. I'll read them after you.
I sent you a video of a commercial. Do you still have that? It's on your Facebook Messenger.
I can look real quick.
Also, too, melon.
Don't play it right now, though. Just see if you have it there. What's that, Eva?
Melon that you're talking about also is Mellon Bank.
Yeah.
It's Carnegie and Mellon
family. Yeah.
So let's talk about what they inject into your water supply and where it comes from. A byproduct of the fertilizer and aluminum factories. Okay. As they are producing this stuff, you ever gone by a factory and seen the smokestack flying out of the chimneys? So you got this smoke coming out of the chimneys in these factories. As that smoke builds up in the chimneys, just like when you have chimney in your house, you have soot that builds up around the side of that chimney, right? So you have this soot that builds up inside the chimneys of these factories as the smoke's bilging out the top. Well, every once in a while, that soot builds up so bad that they got to wash it out. So they take a hose and they pressure wash the soot out of these chimneys. They capture that stuff in barrels. That is hydrofluorosilicic acid, what they're injecting into our water supply.
And I have
before you play that commercial, this is something I found when I was doing my podcast. This is actually from the CDC's manual. The CDC themselves, right? They have a manual titled Water Fluoridation, a manual for engineers and technicians that I had to find digging around on their site. So I'm reading this from their site. The largest production of the acid is a byproduct of phosphate fertilizer manufacture. Phosphate is ground up and treated with sulfuric acid, performing a gas byproduct. Now, what they don't mention is that gas byproduct is the smoke that comes out the chimney tops from these manufacturing plants. Now, back to their thing. This gas is reacted with water, forming a weak hydrofluorosilicic acid. That's the water that's used. It's reacted because they're hosing down the chimney stacks to clean that out. This acid is concentrated from 23 to 30% strength. This type of acid is relatively impure. And that's what it says. And the reason why they don't know what the strength is because it's just a byproduct of washing it out. It's not a scientifically prepared mixture. Their own site on the CDC goes on to explain other uses of hydrofluorosilicic acid: sterilization of equipment, electroplating, tanning of animal hides, etching of glass, refining of lead, and hardening of cement.
Well, that sounds great.
Do you want me to play the ad you gave me?
I had this linked on my Water Seafood Light site, and they destroyed their link. I just had to look again and found it again on their site somewhere else.
Assholes.
So now the commercial that I sent you was a commercial that they played in New Zealand. And when they played this commercial, the anti-fluoride people freaked out and tried to get them to pull it. But the station looked into everything and said, we can't pull it because everything they said is totally true. If you can play that commercial, it's like a minute long.
Yeah, there we go. Do you see it?
Yeah, make it full screen if you can on the little.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Can't hear it.
This fluoride is a product collected from the chimneys of the fertilizer industry. This fluoride chemical also contains traces of lead, aluminium, mercury, arsenic, and sometimes uranium. It is banned from being released into the air, sea, lakes, and rivers because it is toxic to animals and the environment. Instead, ratepayers' money buys this toxic chemical handled by workers wearing hazmat suits like this. This fluoride is what goes into our drinking water.
Wow.
Find out the facts. Visit fluoridefree.org.nz.
Wow.
Interesting.
So if anybody listening to this takes two things away, whenever they talk about doctors, the doctors aren't doing the studies on this. And any doctor will tell you, don't give out medicine this way. The other thing they're not mentioning as a water operator is when you have a treatment plant with one source, here comes the plant, it's injecting that water out into the supply. Maybe you can get an accurate dose in there. Now, that minimum dose is also harmful. But like somebody else mentioned earlier, systems aren't that, these people don't know what they're talking about because systems aren't that easy to understand. Because like where I worked at San Jose Water, we had 3 treatment plants. We took import water from 3 treatment plants from the county through, I'd say 12 different imports. We had hundreds of wells throughout our system. So trying to balance an accurate level of fluoride in the system is impossible. Now, originally they would.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the lawsuit that you were talking about.
Yeah, my friend Brenda started a lawsuit, her and some other mothers. And they started it in 2016.
This one says, like you said, fluoride in drinking water at levels public health officials consider optimal for preventing tooth decay poses an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children. Senior Judge Edward Chen wrote in his September 24th decision out of the U.S. District Court of the Northern District of California. It should be noted that this finding does not conclude with certainty that fluoridated water is injurious to public health, but that risk sufficient to trigger rulemaking under TSCA exists, Chen continued.
This is what Brenda posted on Facebook was a ruling of the court. She said she was crying so much at the time and so happy that she just, she'd been fighting this fight for 9 years. And that's true. Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna have time to get into side effects, but it does two things about fluoride. It also causes brittleness in the bones. It causes osteoporosis. One study tried to use fluoride to see if it would strengthen bones, and they found just the opposite, that it actually makes your bones a lot more brittler. But the conclusion of the law from that lawsuit said plaintiffs have proven by a preponderance of the evidence that water fluoridation at the level of 0.7 milligrams, the prescribed optimal level of fluoridation in the United States, presents an unreasonable risk of injury to health or the environment, including an unreasonable risk to a potentially exposed or susceptible subpopulation under the conditions of use. Now, I want to say one thing. They say the optimal level. Oh, by the way, the fluoride camp, safe and effective. Where have we heard that shit for the past few years?
Right.
Safe and effective.
And someone's asking about water filters too. So we're going to discuss that, what people can do.
So they like to say the 0.7, it's actually 0.7 to like 1.2, safe and effective at the optimal range, 0.7 to 1.2. However, the actual law, the MCL, the maximum contaminant level allowable, is a 4. So it's safe and effective at a 0.7 to a 1.2, but the law allows they could inject a 3.9 into the system. And then another thing that has to be said, if you overdose fluoride, it's poisonous. Now, there have been overdoses. People say no one's going to overdose. They'll just throw up. People have sent to the hospital. People have died. But if I screw up and I overdose, the machine fails and overdoses chlorine into the system. In California, the recommended MCL is 2. It's actually a 4 for that. But if I send a high dose of chlorine out into the system, you're going to get that at your tap. You're going to smell it. You're going to go, wow, this smells strong. You're going to take a sip. You're going to go, this tastes like shit. And you're going to spit it out. Fluoride is odorless and tasteless. So not only is it poisonous, but if you overdose the system, the end consumer is not going to smell it or taste it.
They tried to kill us. I know that sounds crazy, but where I live, during Super Bowl weekend, remember how the infrastructure attacks were happening?
I don't remember that. This last Super Bowl?
No.
The one
when it
happened
in
23.
It was Tampa, when Super Bowl was in Tampa. So on Friday,
by the way, I want to make a point.
What?
I'm drinking bottled water.
Okay.
You and I had that whole talk this morning, which I don't want to get into with everybody, but once a year, a water system that uses chloramination will switch to chlorine to get rid of certain things in the system. And when they do that, they superchlorinate at very high levels because chlorine and chloramine can cancel each other out. What it ends up doing is the stuff that comes out of the tap is wretched. And then when the chlorine, they have to put so much chlorine to kill the chloramines. It also causes taste and odors for a while. So during that time, I'm all over the bottled water. So,
So, here, this right here. So that was where I live. A hacker, allegedly, it was tried to
they tried to hack the equipment of the water system.
Poison the city's water supply.
Never going to happen.
Upping the sodium hydroxide levels in Oldsmar, Florida, to extremely dangerous levels. Never
going to happen.
So they did, though.
They did. None of that went out into this. That didn't go out into the system.
So luckily they were able to catch it, but then they tried again a few hours later. So it was Super Bowl weekend. This happened on the Friday. Apparently it would have taken 48 hours to kick in before it killed every man, woman, child, and pet in the area. So luckily,
sodium hydroxide is just chlorine, basically.
Yeah. They also said that was
for adjusting the pH levels. Yeah.
That was the media story. My good friend works in the city. He told me the whole story, and they downplayed it, but the FBI was all over the city. So it was more than just a hacker. There was more going on than that. And there was lie and everything else. So.
I saw that study. Something happened somewhere else in the country too. The only thing that you have to understand is that let's assume somebody hacked the plant SCADA system, which could potentially be possible. And they jack up either the sodium hydroxide or they jack up the chlorine levels or something like that. An operator running that plant is going to see alarms go off and they're going to respond to that.
Right.
The other thing is the plants they're wired to shut down automatically. So if, for example, where I was working at the plant before, there was a range that chlorine had to be in. If it went too low or if it went too high, alarm sounded. And then if it went past that to a critical point, the whole plant would shut off. Not only that, but there's alarm points in the system where people catch things like that too. So if you have operators in a system, someone can hack SCADA and maybe inject more, but the chances of it actually sending out like that, not so much. We had a plant when I was working in San Jose that did shoot out too much chlorine into the system one time.
Oh, this one was lye. It says here. Lye.
What name the product again?
Lye.
No, before that. What did you call it?
It said a few hours later, police say that a plant operator noticed his mouse moving out of his control again. They took over the system. It was an old system. This time, there would be no illusion of benign monitoring from a supervisor or IT person. The cursor began clicking through the water treatment plant's controls. Within seconds, the intruder was attempting to change the water supply's levels of sodium hydroxide, also known as lye or caustic soda, moving the setting from 100 parts per million to 11,100 parts per million.
What that's going to do is adjust the pH. In places where...
In low concentrations, the corrosive chemical regulates the pH level of potable water. At high levels, it severely damages any human tissue it touches.
Yeah, you want to adjust the pH to a certain range when it leaves the plant. You don't want the water to be too acidic. And you want to have a certain amount of alkalinity in the water to reduce changes in pH. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll add caustic soda, jack up the pH, and then they add carbon dioxide to bring it back down to the perfect range, and it helps the water, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is that plants, just like I said, they have alarms for chlorine. They have alarms for pH levels as well. So like that operator probably caught it because he saw an alarm and then he couldn't touch it, but he could manually shut down that plant, which is probably what he did. I don't know how
he caught it, but thank goodness he did.
Yeah.
Daryl was asking about water filters such as Brita will help with the contaminants. From what I understand, reverse osmosis. You need a reverse osmosis system to filter everything out.
In a home, you want reverse osmosis. You want to make sure. The problem with that is there's a lot of things in the water that you do want too. A lot of the minerals that can come in your water you do want. But if you want to filter everything out, reverse osmosis. That's what I was telling you. I got to call the guys in the plant in town and say, okay, so we banned water fluoridation. When's it going to go into effect? Because I just bought this new place, and if it's not going to go into effect soon, I'm going to install a reverse osmosis just because of the fluoride in this area.
Right.
If it goes into effect, I'm fine drinking the tap water, but I would put the reverse osmosis in just to get rid of the fluoride in the air. I would not drink the fluoride.
Right. Yeah. So I saw somebody argued about people's tooth decay. It was they swore that this was going to be a thing. So there were two different towns. One was, I think, in Western Canada, where they got rid of the fluoride in the tap water, and apparently the children started having a lot of tooth decay issues.
Not true.
So what I asked was, where are the control studies? So could you release all the studies? So obviously they must have logged down that the children were only drinking tap water. They weren't drinking any bottled water at all. And then after they took the fluoride out of the water, obviously they made sure that the children were still only drinking tap water. Where are those studies? So no one could produce them. So then I asked, the CDC says that 25% of children get tooth decay without fluoride in the water. Then I asked for those studies. So I assume there's a whole bunch of studies with control. No one could find them. Can't get them anywhere. So at this point, it leads me to, and I'm asking AI. I'm searching for all these things. Even on dentists' websites, they're saying it's not true. So at this point, I think it's just some kind of mass bullshittery, kind of like if you go outside with a wet head, you're going to get sick. No, idiot. If you touch a mucous membrane with germs, you're going to get sick. So I think it's like a wives' tale that people repeat over and over and over and over again. You need fluoride or your teeth are going to decay. I think it's that. Like fluoride in the water is going to cause this. It's like if you say it enough times, people are going to believe it. That's part of the brainwashing thing. Like I'm not finding any evidence anywhere. So
Hey, do you know who Edward Bernays is?
Yeah, from your studies though. So
Edward Bernays, he came out with a book called I think his book was Propaganda. It was a bestseller. And Edward Bernays watched World War II, and he saw the propaganda that the Nazis used during World War II. And he decided if propaganda could be so, this is his exact words, if propaganda could be so effective during wartime, it could be used by countries during peacetime.
Yeah.
But
there's a reason we're not allowed to study anything that Hitler did. Like, oh, you say that name. You can't this, that, and the other, because it was so effective at that time, the things that they did. So to not study how that happened and how that influenced so many people would be idiotic.
Edward Bernays said it's so effective we can use it in peacetime, right? But he said, in his own words, he said, but propaganda had a bad name. He said, so I gave it a new name and I invented the word public relations. So Edward Bernays is actually known as the father of propaganda, father of public relations. And in his book, Propaganda, he tells all this stuff. And back then, we didn't have the internet, so he was fine telling it because it wasn't going to get out and everything like it is right now. But a favorite technique of Edward Bernays was to use doctors, and we saw the same thing in COVID. They were paid for by the, not doctors, was to use scientists that were bought and paid for by the industry, use those scientists to convince the doctors, and then use doctors to convince the American people. We saw
actors in lab coats too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we saw that with smoking, right?
Right.
Edward Bernays actually he started a whole campaign during a Macy's Day Parade where these women they all lighted up smoking. They called cigarettes torches of freedom. And they were a bunch of, well-to-do women that just decided they were going to do a protest. The whole thing was planned by him, covered by the media. And from that point on, women smoking really took off. He pushed smoking a lot, even though he wouldn't let his own wife smoke. So he knew smoking was bad. He pushed bacon for breakfast. He defended the asbestos companies. And Edward Bernays was hired by Oscar Ewing, the DPH lawyer for Mellon, to promote water fluoridation.
Yeah, my grandfather died from asbestos. He had mesothelioma. So the Milgram experiment, speaking of that, are you guys familiar with the Milgram experiment?
Very, yeah.
Okay, so the Milgram obedience experiment conducted in the 1960s by Yale psychologist Stanley Milgram explored how authority impacts obedience. So the experiments involved participants being instructed by an authority figure to administer what they believed were dangerous electric shocks to another person. In reality, the other person was a paid Confederate or actor, and the shocks were fake. But the results were astounding. Over 70% of participants delivered the shocks all the way up through a death level shock, contradicting expert predictions simply because a perceived authority told them to do it, and they only received 3 prompts.
If you ever get a chance to look at the actual footage of that experiment, I recommend it. One of my podcasts I did years ago was called The Top 8 Studies on Molding Human Behavior. And it's actually funny as shit when you know it's an actor in the other room, because what they had to do was ask him a question. If they answered it wrong, they had to push the button to give him the shock, right? And so there's a guy in a lab coat, right? Lab coats again. And they tell the guy,
they're gods. Lab coats are gods, apparently.
And the person that was doing the experiment, they pushed the button, and you hear through the wall, oh God, oh. And the guy screams. And then after a while, the guy starts going, let me go. I don't want to do this anymore. Let me out of here. And the other people are like, I don't want to push the button. And the guy's like, you are required to push the button.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
These people would push the button anyway.
Yeah, that was it. That's all it took. You're required. You're mandated to take it.
But the acting job in these people in the other room, it wasn't like they didn't see anything. It was these wails of pain coming through the wall.
Yeah.
But if you know it's a setup, it's actually kind of funny, except for the fact that people do push that button.
I know. That's what's horrifying. It's oh my God.
Makes me think of Scientology. Sorry, but
so
the machines they hook you up to.
Oh no,
I don't know enough about Scientology to judge it one way or another.
Thing.
Yeah,
no,
I've done it. I've gone down to the thing in Clearwater. I got hooked up to the machine. It's not the same. You don't get shocked.
Did you go down there and like walk into Scientology?
Yeah. They did
you were hired. Take this uniform and walk around outside, right?
They did a whole thing. They did a whole reading on me. I go in. I'll do every religion. I try them all out.
So for all of your listeners, because your listeners are all over the country, right?
Yeah.
So we live right next to the Scientology building.
Yeah.
You will never see an ugly woman walking around outside the Scientology building.
No.
You don't see women at all.
Yeah, no, I see women. There's women down there all the time.
I know, but not as many as that stay indoors.
They're walking around. They're out there all the time because they own all of downtown Clearwater.
Yeah, they wear the khaki pants and the white shirt, just like Derek.
And they wear like a blue vest or something like that. Yeah.
And a beeper. They have a pager. They have a beeper on.
Yeah, and they do squats the whole time. They're not walking around outside. The guys too. There's never an ugly person walking around outside a Scientology building.
Yeah, it's basically, and then they do their own version of, have you heard the good news?
Getting back to fluoride, if we could real quick.
Yes.
I do want to say this because we were talking about the studies, right? They did a study of 400,000 kids in India that showed no benefit of water fluoridation. Studies in England and Scotland found the same thing. Another study in Chile spanning 40 years had the same result, no benefits whatsoever.
Wait, I got a question.
Yeah.
Does England have fluoridated water?
A bunch of the countries in Europe do not. I think England does.
Oh, well, look at those teeth. That tells you enough right there. A number
of the countries in Europe do not.
England has like the worst teeth ever. Okay. Like just the entire country, the teeth are bad. That should say plenty right there.
That commercial that we played was in New Zealand and they were battling against it. Mm-hmm. The journal Fluoride actually reported in a study 98% of the children in New Zealand over 14 years, fluoridation had no dental benefit of them. And then one thing I do want to say, there was a guy, Dr. John Calhoun, I think I'm saying his name right. He was the principal dentist office for the largest city in New Zealand. He was a huge pro-fluoridation opponent, mm-hmm. right? And then he was pushing fluoridation, and he was given the task of reviewing the worldwide data on fluoride effectiveness and safety. And after reviewing this, he changed his whole mind on fluoride. There's actually an article that says why I changed my mind about fluoridation, where he goes into the detail and he talks about how any pro-fluoride studies that were out there can be very rigged, because he says they don't study cavities. They study something called a dental carie, which is a precursor to even a cavity existing. Like, oh, you see this little thing that could cause a cavity someday, right? And what a dental carie is can be very, very subjective. It can be very just the eye of the beholder. And the people doing these studies, they're bought and paid for almost all the time by the fluoride industry. And they know, because it's impossible for someone not know if they're studying cavities in a fluoridated area or a non-fluoridated area. So it's easy to be very, very subjective with their results. Just throwing that out there. Any studies that you can find, and like you said, they're very, very hard to find anyone, but they can't be confirmed. And so many other ones from the other camp have proven that there's no results at all.
I have a bunch of questions.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I was going to sum it up, but go ahead. We got like 6 minutes left. And high rider for life, JC. Go ahead, Eva.
Well, I did look real quick in England. It says only about 10% of England has.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing. I got 14% of the UK.
Which means it's not outlawed in England, though. They're trying to to put in place, but it's not outlawed in the state. Just like here, the whole country, I think they set a goal years back to fluoridate 75% of the United States. They weren't able to get there. Yeah.
I forgot what else I was going to add. Sorry. Oh, well, Lori brought up the whole cancer thing too. So it's been in our water long enough, and somebody must have delve into the idea of what else it can do, either to organs, cancer causing, something along those lines. So ever hear anything on that, Ty?
I believe the term was osteosarcoma, cancer. Animal experience have noted fluoride-related incidents of a rare bone cancer called osteosarcoma in young male rats. Recent studies since have found likewise in young boys in fluoridated, increased rates in young boys in fluoridated areas of America, but not in unfluoridated ones. So there's been an increase of osteosarcoma in fluoridated areas in young boys that's not in the unfluoridated ones. There's brain impairments, risk to kidneys, risk to infants, which is why the EPA said don't give it to children under 6 months. There's a whole list of stuff, but like
somewhat of a link to bladder cancer too.
I will, let me just throw this out there. Again, I do a 4-part series on it. The first one talked about my concerns as an operator. The second one, I go into the whole history of fluoride. The third one I call safe and effective, really? And then the fourth one, I talk about if it's so bad. Keep in mind, I was not a conspiracy theorist back then. So I had to ask these questions. If it's so bad, how's it getting injected into our water supply? So I looked at, that was the 4 parts. That's what I covered in those.
Okay.
If you eat healthy, I'll tell you, like you weren't a conspiracy theorist back then, but if you start eating healthy or growing your own food, or if you have chickens, that will turn you into conspiracy theorists pretty fast. So, because once you start growing your own stuff and seeing what it tastes like versus the stuff you get at the grocery store, you start digging in. You're like, wait, why does this taste so bland? Why is there no flavor? Why is this the texture? And you start digging and you're like, wait, why is this okay? Why did they put that on it? And you start digging deeper. You're like, oh shit, they're approving these things. This is not safe. And the more you start doing it, you become this raving conspiracy theorist across the board.
You know what turned me into a conspiracy theorist? Fluoride was my eye-opener that our government would actually lie to us. It was an eye-opener about business getting their foot in our government and doing whatever they wanted and not caring about us. What really turned me into a conspiracy theorist was after I retired and I started the Breaking Your Chains podcast. I had time to think and time to let my mind focus on things instead of just being so busy working. And I grabbed topics that interested me. And the big topic that turned it around was after an election. It was I forget what, I think it was the last time. It was the last time Donald Trump got elected. Not this time, but before. I was interested in wondering where these candidates come from, because every election is the same thing. Everyone's going, we got these 2 crappy people. I got a choice between worse and bad and worse. Right. Where do these come from? I did a whole podcast called the System is Rigged, Why I Quit Voting. That was podcast number 1. Podcast number 2, I wanted to find out where our candidates for presidency come from. And that sent me down, you know how I can do. That was a 4-month rabbit hole putting out 2 podcasts. and that was, 50 hours a week, like I jump into something. And I came out the other side of that, a conspiracy theorist. And then the next thing, I think one of the next things I wanted to look into was after I finished up with my properties in Jacksonville, I thought, God, everyone's talking about global warming and these hurricanes. Is that a real thing? Do I really have to worry about that? So I took another 3 or 4 months and jumped into global warming, found out it's all funded by the oil industry. It was created by the oil industry, funded by the oil industry, and didn't know any of that before. So having the free time to actually research things and just to sit back and think about things. If you can find time in your life to do that, it's kind of scary.
Yeah, then, a lot of it takes forever. Yeah, well, go ahead. It takes forever to dig. Sorry, Eva, go ahead.
No, it's all right. I was going to say that. So everything you do now is all on your breaking your chains, right?
Yeah, water sifu, I haven't done anything. The funniest thing is about 2 years ago, I put out a 10-year reunion episode because somebody said, 10 years, somebody sent me a text, 10 years later and still preparing for exams with the sifu. And I'm like, wow, has it been 10 years? But I haven't done anything to that site except for that one episode for about 12 years. And everything I do now is on breaking your chains when I feel breaking your chains is different. That's kind of like my search for personal growth, where I find things that interest me and I dive into and basically produce master's subjects on them.
Yeah,
your podcasts are amazing.
Yeah, they're amazing. I think our people who listen to us would probably transfer over to your stuff very easily.
I'm not nearly as regular as I should be, but because I look so much into the subjects, I don't put them out. I don't put something out till I'm done. I'm gonna start coming out. Wade's coming on the next one with me. You're gonna be on one soon after that. I got a good series I like coming out, but yeah, it's been a lot of, I don't know if fun's the right word. I think I fell into the conspiracy theorist funnel, and I'm coming out the other end with a realization that I can spend all my time getting mad at my government, but the best thing I want to do is not put negativity out in the world.
Yeah.
Not to sound like a 70s hippie, but I want to put love into the world.
Yeah.
Because there's too much negativity. So I want to focus on putting happiness and love into the world and making people's lives better. And I find my life's getting better with my anxiety is going down.
Good.
You know? Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I don't think even conspiracy theorists should be a term that's even used unless you use it proudly. And War Demon, bye. Thanks for being here with us. Woof, hello. Yeah, I think truth. Huh? What?
Go ahead.
I think truth seeker, being a truth seeker. That's what that's what we try to do. I know a lot of people here, they work, they're busy. They don't always have time to research things. That's what we're trying to do, is to bring it to light for them so they can see what's going on. So, what were you saying, Eva? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, came across something and actually brought a can home today. I don't know if you can see it. Emergency drinking water.
Oh, really?
So, yes. And in the 1950s, they started making these in the 60s, not just for wartime, but for your bomb shelters. You were supposed to have 2 cans per person filled with water. And I was looking up some videos. People actually still have a lot of these, and they would give them out in cases, and they pop them open, and the water's still fucking good in it, believe it or not.
Well, they were training. They were training kids. They were training kids by have them go for like what kind of bomb? Was an atom bomb or a nuclear
bomb
thing?
Shelters,
by going underneath their desks.
2 cans of water, and 2 cans of water, that'll set you up, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 2 cans of water and going underneath your desk, and you will be fine.
Yeah.
Whatever lining they may have.
That wasn't all about fear tactics, right?
Right. No, the government doesn't lie to you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, just thought I'd share that. I thought it was interesting.
Awesome.
It's interesting. Like way back in the day, they had like a mandate, like everybody needed to have 1 chicken per person in the household, because they wanted people to be self-sufficient. So it was like literally 1 chicken per person. And then now you have governments fighting you over raising chickens. So
right.
I had to go to court over my chickens. I literally had to go to court over the government saying you can't have chickens. And I was like, but I can. And they ended up being like, oh yeah, I guess you can. And I was like, fuck you, pay me. So yeah. And then my neighbor got them right after that. They're like, oh, we can have chickens. Yeah, it's crazy. It's not that the government will do these things. It's not that they'll lie to us. We know this. They do it out in the open now. No, they're not even trying to hide it. It's not that it's happening or not happening. It's definitely happening. What's really frustrating is that there's a contingent of people pretending it's not happening, and they're doubling down on the lies. So they are the problem. So we know that the government is is bullshit most of the time. A significant portion of the time.
What's your solution for that? Do you have one?
Bring more truth to light. Find ways to get it out there.
Be informed. Stay informed.
Stay informed. Find real sources of information. Stay off the news. You can always tell people who watch the news.
There will always be those people that suck into their news channels, but more and more people are falling away.
Term limits. I see the people watching the news right now because they're the ones that are wearing masks everywhere right now.
You'll see people doing that.
Yeah.
I went into the store
you see the fear stuff going on right now.
I went into Publix the other day and everyone was wearing a mask. Yeah. And when I walked out of the store, I asked the person at the register, I said, I don't pay attention to the news. I said, is there another like COVID thing going around? And everyone's wearing masks in the store. He goes, nothing I've heard of. I said, why is everyone wearing masks? He didn't know.
Funny.
So is there something new supposed to be going around?
There's supposed to be a new variant going around.
That's why everyone's wearing the masks.
So
fear tactics, money.
So either a new variant's going around or they really got stuck with a lot of that vaccine. And they with the vaccine trial that just happened, they know it's bad news, so they're trying to push the rest of that stuff out. So they gotta get it moving somehow.
They gotta make some. Yep, gotta do something.
So now we tell the people that there's a new variant. Let's push that vaccine super hard. Let's make that money. Personally, I feel like there's so much traffic going on now, and there's such a long wait for restaurants on a Saturday night. I feel like another vaccine rollout is necessary. Like, bring it. Just bring it at this point. Bring it. If at this point people are still doing it, bring it. Okay? That's all. That's all. I'm done. I'm done championing for them. That's it. If they're going to do it, let them do it. Let them take all the boosters. Okay?
So, Ty, where else can they find you?
My Breaking Your Chains. Let's see. I have the Water Sifu podcast that I did forever. And then I don't know if anyone likes Hawaii. I did a Kauai. By the way, I did a Kauai podcast, and one of those I actually pulled over to Water Sifu. When I talked about studies, Kauai has this problem with GMO companies. Kauai is very fertile ground. So for testing the GMO crops, a lot of these companies go there because they can test 3 times the crops that they can over here on the mainland, right? Because the weather all year round. And so what they're doing is they're testing, but in the process of that, they're spraying the heck out of really poisonous chemicals, and they're not even required to list what they're spraying. And every time the Hawaiian people try to fight the government saying, just tell us what you're spraying, it keeps getting
start a wildfire?
Down. It keeps getting shot down. So the interesting thing is I did a 3-month subject on that. And what I found out really surprised me that a couple of these companies involved with spraying on Hawaii were part of a major company during World War II that was Hitler's war machine. So these companies are spraying Hawaii, these billion-dollar companies, they're spraying Hawaii. Bayer is one of them.
Bayer.
Yeah.
Bayer
and BASF.
Yeah.
But anyway, they were spraying Hawaii right now. And I actually said in my podcast, there's a good chance Pearl Harbor wouldn't even have happened without these companies. So you talk about me researching things before I came out and said something like that publicly. I was going to make sure I had all my backup. I mean, I talked about watching the studies on the one. I literally watched the Nuremberg trials after World War II before I came out and said that.
Oh, yeah. Bayer's got a long, sordid Nazi history, and they imported all those scientists over here, brought them over to America, and brought all the research with them.
I released that podcast. 6 months after I released that podcast, I get an email from one of the major government officials over in Hawaii was fighting the GMO companies, and he tells me he's been fighting them for 10 years. He tells me, I just listened to your podcast. I want to tell you it's the best thing on the subject I've ever seen.
That's good.
That's cool.
I actually didn't tell about it. A couple of people around me, but you want to talk about feeling good. Yeah. And he invited me to have lunch with him if ever I was in Hawaii. He wanted to pick my brain on some stuff. We never did that.
That's good.
But I thought that was flattering. But my Kauai podcast was just my attempt to study and learn the island because I wanted to know more about it. I learned a lot. And then I I did a Tampa one after I moved out here. I was still dealing with effects from my car crash, but I was trying to get out into the world and do stuff. And I did like 20 episodes, and I found out that nobody cared, and I didn't really care either. So I just didn't do it anymore.
It's a different world out here.
I lost my, it wasn't like Hawaii. You go to this beautiful
Hawaii
trail.
Fantasy. Tampa's a reality. Okay?
Yeah. Hawaii is a tropical jungle. Tampa's a tropical swamp, and it's beautiful.
Yes.
It's beautiful, but you can't go in any bodies of water between snakes and gators and poison ivy. And you're not going to, the hikes here don't have destinations. In Kauai, you hike
except to come out
alive.
alive.
Or a waterfall or something like that, you know? Here, everything's flat. You just,
we have waterfalls, we have caves, and they're just not big and pretty.
Yeah, it's not the same.
No.
The
best thing we got going on are the springs. We got natural springs.
Mm-hmm. And I should say I love it here. You know, I absolutely love it here. So I don't want to sit here and crap on our area. But
everybody stop moving to Florida, you guys. Stop. Just stop. Everybody stop. Stop.
We already shut the border.
We full. We full.
I can't do that. But
all right. What else?
Stop.
Those are it. Water seafood, breaking your chains is my main one. Breaking your chains is the only one that I do right now. That's where I'm at.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for lending your expertise to us and to everybody who might want to know what the real story is with taking fluoride out of the water or having it in, or how they can pull it out by using reverse osmosis. So thank you.
One other thing I will say, if I could say one thing, none of those sites are monetized. The water sifu site is monetized.
Okay.
I give away about 95% of everything. There's a couple of continuing education courses, a math course, an ebook that I do sell. Everything else, if anyone's actually curious about getting into the water industry, all the podcasts, all the videos, everything there is entirely free. So
that's one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on, because you just give the information.
Everybody else, I've had a million people say, you don't charge enough for the things you do charge for. You should charge more. And I'm like, I'm comfortable. It's a service, and I enjoy knowing that it's helping that many people out there, and it pays for itself.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's the meaning of life, supposedly. Find what you're good at and give it away.
Thanks for having me on the show, April.
Yeah, thank you.
And Eva, wonderful to see you. Wonderful seeing you both.
Too.
Yeah, especially since you moved away. Hang on, and we'll stay there for a second. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Again, feel free to join us tomorrow night late. We're going to have Big Ray Hernandez back on with us at a little 11, maybe a few minutes after 11 o'clock on Wednesday night. We would love to have you with us live. But if you can't catch it, we will have that replaying next Tuesday. See you next Tuesday. And of course, you can see me live on Sunday with Ms. Eva. We will be at the Lake Square Mall in Leesburg at Lake Collecticon Comic Con, that's just free parking, free event.
Yes.
Some good for families.
Where's that at?
That is at the Lake Square Mall in Leesburg.
No, where's Leesburg at? Like as far as Tampa?
Mount Dora.
Oh, okay.
Mount Dora area.
North Orlando. Got it.
Yeah. So it's a good time. From 12 to 5, we'll be there. Happy to sign with you. And Jack O'Halloran will also be there. He's the big name coming. So the big
quite a few
boxer turned major. Yeah, he's been in every movie ever. So it'll be worth the trek for this one. All right, everybody. Thank you. We appreciate you very much. Thank you. Have a good one, and maybe we'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you, cool, awesome dude. Appreciate you. Mwah. Thanks, you guys. Yeah, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.